The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the familiar drive, dust clouds swirling in the afternoon light. It had been 5 years since I'd last seen the weathered porch of my childhood home, since I'd breathed the honeyed air of Edenvale Hollow. The farmhouse stood exactly as I remembered. White paint peeling like old skin, shutters hanging askew, and the screen door that never quite closed properly. But it was the tree that stopped my breath. The apricot tree at the meadow's edge had grown magnificent in my absence. Its branches stretched wider now, heavy with clusters of soft pink blossoms that caught the dying sunlight like scattered rose petals. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting the sudden ache in my chest. A&T forever. The words carved into that bark 10 years ago might as well have been carved into my heart. "Arabell!" My mother's voice called from the porch, snapping me back to the present. She hurried down the steps, arms outstretched, silver hair catching the breeze. "You made good time from the city." I climbed out of the car and let her embrace swallow me whole. She smelled of lavender soap and fresh bread, exactly as she always had. "The house looks smaller than I remembered," I said, pulling back to study her face. New lines creased the corners of her eyes, but her smile remained unchanged. "Everything does when you've been away." She squeezed my hands. "Come on, there's sweet tea waiting and we have so much work ahead of us." The inside of the farmhouse felt like stepping into a photograph. Everything frozen in time, yet somehow faded around the edges. Dust motes danced in streams of golden light that poured through lace curtains. The same quilts draped the furniture, the same family portraits lined the mantel, and the same creaky floorboard announced every footstep in the hallway. "The realtor thinks we can have everything sorted within the month," Mom said, pouring tea from a pitcher beaded with condensation. "Though I warn you, the attic alone might take us a week." I nodded, only half listening. Through the kitchen window, I could see the apricot tree swaying gently in the evening breeze. Its blossoms seemed to glow in the fading light. "Is the Moreau place still?" I began, then stopped myself. Mom's expression softened. "Travis is still there. Has been since his father passed 3 years ago." She paused, measuring her words carefully. "He's got a little girl now, Emma. She's 7. My throat tightened. "I heard about Sarah." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Cancer took her fast. Too fast." Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. "He's been raising Emma alone since then. Good man, that boy. Always was." Boy. As if Travis Moreau could ever be anything but 8 years old in my mind, with dirt under his fingernails and mischief in his dark eyes. That first night, I lay in my childhood bedroom listening to the sounds I'd forgotten. The whisper of wind through wheat, the distant lowing of cattle, the soft hoot of an owl somewhere in the darkness. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of carved initials and whispered promises under a canopy of apricot blossoms. Morning brought the scent of bacon and fresh coffee, along with my mother's voice calling up the stairs. "Arabell, we've got company." I threw on jeans and a sweater, running my fingers through my tangled hair as I hurried downstairs. Through the screen door, I could see a small figure on the porch, a little girl with dark braids, clutching something in her hands. "This is Emma," Mom said, opening the door wider. "Emma, this is my daughter Arabell. She's going to be staying with us for a while." The child looked up at me with solemn brown eyes that were achingly familiar. "Daddy said I should bring you this." She held out a mason jar filled with golden preserves, the lid tied with a gingham ribbon. "It's apricot jam, from our tree." My heart stuttered. "Your tree?" "Well, Daddy says it's really everybody's tree, but it grows on our side of the fence." Emma's smile was shy but genuine. "He makes the best jam in all of Edenvale Hollow. At least that's what Mrs. Patterson says at the farmer's market. I accepted the jar with hands that trembled slightly. The glass was still warm from the kitchen, and a small label on the side read Moreau Farm in careful script. "Please tell your daddy thank you," I managed. "You can tell him yourself if you want. He's fixing the fence between our properties." Emma pointed toward the meadow. "Right by the pretty tree." My pulse quickened. Through the kitchen window, I could just make out a tall figure working near the apricot tree, his back turned toward the house. "Maybe later," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. Emma nodded and skipped down the porch steps, her braids bouncing. "Bye, Miss Arabell. Daddy says you used to live here when you were little like me." "I did," I called after her. "A long time ago." But as I watched her small form disappear down the lane, I realized it didn't feel like long ago at all. The morning passed in a blur of sorting and packing. Mom and I tackled the linen closet first, shaking out quilts that smelled of cedar and memories. Every few minutes, I found myself glancing toward the window, searching for movement near the fence line. "You could just go say hello," Mom said finally, not looking up from the photograph albums she was organizing. "It's the neighborly thing to do. I don't want to interrupt his work." "Arabell," her tone was gentle but firm, "you can't spend the next month avoiding him. This is a small hollow." She was right, of course. But the thought of facing Travis, of looking into those dark eyes and pretending the past didn't exist between us, made my stomach twist with anxiety. It was nearly noon when I finally worked up the courage to walk across the meadow. The grass was tall and sweet-smelling, dotted with wildflowers that brushed against my legs as I moved. The apricot tree grew larger with each step, its blossoms more vibrant, more impossibly beautiful than they'd appeared from the house. Travis stood with his back to me, hammering a loose fence post into place. He'd always been tall, but now his shoulders filled out his worn flannel shirt in a way that spoke of years of hard work. His dark hair was shorter than I remembered, touched with silver at the temples. "The tree's gotten bigger," I said softly. He went still for a moment, then slowly turned around. 10 years melted away as our eyes met. He was older, lines etched around his eyes with a mouth that spoke of laughter and loss in equal measure. But his smile, warm and slightly crooked, was exactly the same. Arabell. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "Welcome home." We stood there in the dappled shade, the silence stretching between us like a held breath. A dozen conversations played through my mind. Apologies, explanations, accusations, but none of them seemed to fit the moment. "Emma brought me your jam this morning," I said finally. "It was kind of you." She insisted. His smile widened slightly. Said the new neighbor lady looked sad and needed something sweet. "Smart girl. She gets that from her mother." The words carried no bitterness, only a gentle sadness that made my chest ache. "I'm sorry about Sarah," I said, meaning it completely. "I should have—" "You sent flowers." He cut me off gently. "I got them. They were beautiful." Another silence fell, but this one felt softer somehow. A breeze stirred the branches above us, sending a shower of pink petals spiraling down around us like snow. "Do you remember?" Travis said quietly. "The last time we stood under this tree?" How could I forget? 18 years old, home from my first year of college, and already planning my escape to the city. Travis had just graduated, talking about taking over his father's farm, about building a life in Edenvale Hollow. We'd stood in this exact spot, arguing about the future, about dreams and responsibilities, and the space between us that seemed to grow wider every day. "You don't understand," I'd said, tears streaming down my face. "There's a whole world out there. How can you just stay here forever? How can you just leave?" He'd replied, his voice breaking. "This is home, Arabell. This is real. I'd kissed him then, desperate and fierce, tasting salt and apricot blossoms on his lips. And then I'd walked away, leaving him standing alone beneath the tree we'd claimed as ours. I remember, I whispered. He reached up and touched the bark of the tree, his fingers tracing the faint outline of our carved initials. I thought about cutting it out 100 times over the years. Why didn't you? Because it was the only piece of you I had left. The honesty in his voice nearly undid me. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears that had been 10 years in the making. Travis, Daddy! Emma's voice carried across the meadow, bright and excited. We both turned to see her running toward us, a kite clutched in her small hands. Look what I found in the attic, she called. Can we fly it? Please? The moment between us broke, but gently, like ripples spreading across still water. Travis cleared his throat and stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place. Maybe later, sweetheart. I need to finish this fence first. I can help, I found myself saying. If you want. I'm pretty handy with a hammer. Emma clapped her hands together. Yes. And then we can all fly the kite together. Travis looked at me with something that might have been gratitude. I could use an extra pair of hands. We worked side by side for the next hour, our conversation carefully neutral. Talk of weather and crops and the changes that had come to Edenvale Hollow in my absence. But I was hyper-aware of every movement he made, every accidental brush of his fingers against mine when we both reached for the same tool. Emma proved to be an enthusiastic, if somewhat chaotic assistant, chattering constantly about school and friends and the baby goats that had been born on the Patterson farm. She had Travis's easy laugh and Sarah's delicate features, and watching them together made my heart ache with a longing I'd thought I'd buried years ago. There, Travis said finally, testing the stability of the last post. That should hold through the next storm. Can we fly the kite now? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes. I glanced at my watch, surprised to find that most of the afternoon had slipped away. I should probably get back. Mom's expecting me to help with dinner. Tomorrow, then? Emma's face fell slightly. Please? I never have anyone to fly kites with. The simple statement hit me harder than it should have. This little girl, growing up without a mother, spending her days with only her father and the endless sky of rural Kentucky for company. Tomorrow, I promised, and was rewarded with a brilliant smile. I'll make lunch, Travis said quietly. Nothing fancy. Just sandwiches and lemonade. I'd like that. As I walked back toward the farmhouse, I could feel his eyes following me. When I reached the porch, I turned back to wave. But he'd already disappeared into his own house, Emma's hand clasped securely in his. That evening, as Mom and I sat on the porch swing, sharing a pitcher of sweet tea, she studied me with knowing eyes. How was your afternoon? She asked innocently. Productive. We got the fence repaired. She rocked the swing gently with her foot. And how is Travis? I was quiet for a long moment, watching fireflies blink among the tall grass. Different. The same. I don't know. He's been alone too long, Mom said softly. That little girl needs a mother. Mother. The word was a warning, but she just smiled. I'm just saying what everyone in the Hollow knows. Travis Moreau is a good man who deserves a second chance at happiness. And what makes you think I could give that to him? She reached over and squeezed my hand. Because you're still in love with him, sweetheart. Always have been. I wanted to deny it, to insist that too much time had passed, too much had changed. But sitting there in the gathering dusk, with the scent of apricot blossoms drifting on the evening air, I couldn't find the words to lie. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with just enough wind to make kite flying perfect. I found myself taking extra care with my appearance. choosing a sundress instead of jeans, and braiding my hair back the way I used to wear it in high school. Emma was waiting for me at the fence line, the red kite already assembled and ready for flight. She wore a yellow dress with tiny flowers on it, and her dark hair was caught up in pigtails that bounced when she moved. "Daddy's making egg salad sandwiches," she announced. "They're my favorite. Well, second favorite after peanut butter and jelly, but Daddy says egg salad is more grown-up for when we have company." "I love egg salad sandwiches," I assured her, and she beamed. Travis appeared a moment later, carrying a picnic basket and a thermos. He'd changed into a clean shirt, and his hair was damp from a recent shower. When he smiled at me, my pulse quickened. "Ready for lunch?" he asked. "Ready for kites," Emma corrected, grabbing my hand. "Come on, Miss Arabell. The wind is perfect." We spent the next hour running through the meadow, laughing as the kite soared and dipped and occasionally crashed into the tall grass. Emma was fearless, racing after the runaway kite with delighted shrieks, while Travis and I took turns untangling the string from fence posts and tree branches. "Higher!" Emma called, jumping up and down. "Make it go higher!" I let out more string, watching the red diamond dance against the blue sky. For a moment, I felt 17 again, carefree and full of possibility, with the whole world spread out before me like an endless summer day. "You're good with her," Travis said quietly, moving to stand beside me. "She's easy to love." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. But Travis just nodded, his expression soft as he watched his daughter chase butterflies through the wildflowers. "She talks about you constantly," he said. "Asks when you're coming back, whether you'll be here for her birthday next month." My chest tightened. "I'll be gone by then, back to Chicago." "Will you?" Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. His dark eyes were serious, searching my face as if looking for answers to questions he hadn't asked. "The house will be sold. Mom's moving to Florida to be closer to my sister. There's nothing left for me here." "Nothing?" The single word hung between us, weighted with 10 years of history and the ghost of what we'd once meant to one another. "Daddy, Miss Arabell, come eat." Emma's voice saved me from having to answer. She was already spreading a blanket beneath the apricot tree, chattering about the ants she'd discovered and whether they liked egg salad sandwiches. Lunch was easy and comfortable in a way I hadn't expected. Emma kept up a steady stream of conversation, telling me about her school, her friends, her plans to become a veterinarian so she could take care of all the animals in Edenvale Hollow. "Daddy says animals are good judges of character," she said solemnly, biting into her sandwich. "If they like you, then you must be a good person." "Is that so?" "Uh-huh. And Buttercup likes you already." She pointed to where a fat tabby cat had emerged from the tall grass and was now rubbing against my leg. "She usually hides from strangers." I reached down to scratch behind the cat's ears and was rewarded with a loud purr. "Well, I'm honored to pass the Buttercup test." "See?" Emma grinned. "I told Daddy you were nice." After lunch, Emma curled up on the blanket for a nap, exhausted from her morning of kite-flying adventures. Travis and I sat in comfortable silence, watching her sleep in the dappled shade of the apricot tree. "She's beautiful," I said softly. "Looks just like her mother." His voice was quiet, distant. Sometimes I catch glimpses of Sarah in her expressions, the way she tilts her head when she's thinking. That must be both wonderful and heartbreaking. It is. He was quiet for a moment, then turned to look at me. "I never thanked you for the letter you sent after Sarah died." I'd agonized over that letter for days, starting and discarding a dozen different versions before finally settling on something simple and honest. I'd told him how sorry I was, how I remembered Sarah as kind and funny and perfect for him. I'd signed it simply, "With love, Arabell. I wasn't sure if I should send it, I admitted. We hadn't spoken in so long. I'm glad you did. It meant a lot, knowing you cared. Of course, I cared. The words came out more fierce than I'd intended. I never stopped caring, Travis. Just because I left doesn't mean I stopped loving. I caught myself, but it was too late. He was staring at me intently, those dark eyes searching my face. Loving what? This place, the people here, you. The confession hung between us like a held breath. Arabell. I know it's been 10 years. I know you loved Sarah, and I know I have no right to come back here and say these things. But I need you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did. Not a day has gone by that I haven't wondered what would have happened if I'd stayed. He reached over and took my hand, his fingers warm and calloused against my palm. I wondered too, especially after Sarah got sick. She knew, you know, about us, about what we'd meant to one another. My throat tightened. She did? She made me promise something near the end. Made me swear that if you ever came home, I wouldn't let pride or the past keep me from trying again. He smiled sadly. Said life was too short to waste second chances. Tears pricked at my eyes. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman. She was. And she loved Emma more than life itself. But she also wanted Emma to have a mother who would be there for birthdays and scraped knees and first days of school. She wanted me to be happy again. And are you? Happy? He considered the question seriously, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of my hand. I'm content. I have Emma the farm, a good life here. But happy? Really, truly happy? He shook his head. I haven't been happy since the day you drove away. The honesty in his voice broke something open in my chest. 10 years of carefully constructed walls crumbled in an instant, leaving me raw and vulnerable, and more terrified than I'd ever been in my life. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. I have a job in Chicago, a life there, and Emma. She's been through so much loss already. What if... Hey. He squeezed my hand gently. We don't have to figure everything out today. You're here for the month, right? Maybe we just take it one day at a time and see what happens. I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady. Emma stirred on the blanket, blinking sleepy eyes in the afternoon sun. Are we flying the kite again? She asked hopefully. If you want to, I said, grateful for the distraction. Yes. She scrambled to her feet, suddenly wide awake. But this time, can we both hold the string, together? I glanced at Travis, who nodded with a smile that made my heart skip. Together sounds perfect. We stood side by side in the meadow, Emma between us, all three of our hands wrapped around the kite string. The red diamond soared high above us, dancing against the endless blue sky like a celebration. Look how high it's going, Emma squealed with delight. It's flying all the way to heaven. Maybe it's carrying a message, I said softly, thinking of Sarah and her generous heart. What kind of message? Emma asked. I looked at Travis, seeing my own hope reflected in his dark eyes. Maybe it's saying that sometimes, when you think something is lost forever, it finds its way back home. Like you did? Emma asked with startling perceptiveness. Like I did, I agreed, my voice thick with emotion. As the sun sank toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, we walked back toward the houses together. Emma skipped ahead, chattering about all the things we could do tomorrow, picking wildflowers, teaching me to milk the goats, showing me her secret fort in the old oak tree. She's already planning your whole summer, Travis observed with amusement. And what about you? What are you planning? He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression serious but hopeful. I'm planning to court you properly this time, Arabell Harper. If you'll let me..." The old-fashioned word made me smile despite the tears threatening to spill over. Court me? Dinner dates, long walks, flowers picked from my own garden, maybe even dancing under the stars if I can convince the Pattersons to let us borrow their old record player. His smile was soft, boyish, achingly familiar. I want to do this right. For you, for Emma, for the future we might build together. And if I decide I can't stay, if Chicago calls me back, then I'll let you go. His voice was steady, sure. But I'm hoping, we're both hoping, that you'll find reasons to stay that are stronger than your reasons to leave. I looked back toward the farmhouse, where my mother was probably starting dinner, then at the apricot tree standing sentinel in the gathering dusk. Its blossoms glowed like small pink stars in the fading light, beautiful and ephemeral and perfect. "One day at a time?" I asked. "One day at a time," he confirmed. Emma came running back to us, breathless with excitement. "Miss Arabell, I forgot to tell you. Tomorrow is jam-making day, and Daddy said I could help if you wanted to learn too. We pick the apricots right from our tree." I felt Travis's eyes on me, patient and hopeful and full of quiet love. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang its liquid song, and the evening air carried the promise of rain and new beginnings. "I'd love to learn," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. That night, I sat on the porch swing long after Mom had gone to bed, watching the stars emerge one by one in the velvet sky. The apricot tree was just a dark silhouette in the moonlight, but I could smell its sweet fragrance in the night air. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant in Chicago, asking about a presentation scheduled for next week. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned the phone face down on the wooden slats beside me. Tomorrow, I would learn to make jam from fruit that grew on a tree where my initials were carved beside those of the man I'd never stopped loving. Tomorrow, I would watch Emma's face light up with joy as she showed me her world. Tomorrow, I would take another step closer to a future I'd never dared to imagine. But tonight, I simply sat in the darkness and listened to the sounds of home. The whisper of wind through wheat, the distant call of a night bird, and somewhere in the gentle silence, the promise that sometimes love really does find a way. Still yours, still spring. The words echoed in my heart as I finally went inside, carrying with them the scent of apricot blossoms and the sweet possibility of second chances.